This video is going to look at the sources talking about Claudius's invasion of Britain. It's going to be very short. There's a short section of Suetonius, a coin, and a section of Tacitus. One thing we need to keep in mind, as I would have mentioned on previous videos on Claudius, is that the sources generally don't think much of Claudius for a number of reasons. The main one is the fact that these sources are senatorial in their background. So Suetonius, for example, and Tacitus were both senators, and Claudius put in a lot of administrative changes that took away power from the Senate, and he tended to use his freedmen instead because, to be completely honest, they were better at the job than the Senate were. So the senatorial kind of background of these source authors mean they really don't think much of Claudius, and they're very, very critical of him. So we just need to remember this when we're looking at any source material when we're talking about Claudius. So this is really clear straight away from this section of Suetonius. So Claudius' sole campaign was of no great importance. So Suetonius thinks nothing about the conquest of Britain. It is utterly pointless. Why did he bother? The Senate already voted in triumph for regalia, but he thought it beneath his dignity to accept these. So this is quite a different behaviour from someone like Gaius or Caligula, who had obviously been given a triumph for basically doing absolutely nothing. Claudius is a bit more old-fashioned and does believe that if he's going to be given an honour, he needs to have earned that honour. So, yes, they voted him a triumph, but he's like, but I need to have actually achieved something. So he decides that Britain was the country where a real triumph could be most readily earned. So he, as it says, decides to go to Britain. It points out that Julius Caesar had been there, which is true, and he had collected some shells from the shore and kind of claimed that he had taken over Britain. He also told the tribes who were living in Britain that they should pay a tribute. They didn't pay a tribute, but nobody did anything about it. So Britain isn't under Roman control at all, although Caesar claimed that it had been. So the conquest is there for the taking. So it's quite a difficult journey. So Claudius twice nearly wrecked off the Ligurian coast. Then he is also shipwrecked off these islands. Eventually he arrives at Massalia. He then goes through Gaul and crosses the Channel and was back in Rome 6 months later. So it's a very quick campaign. Fights no battles, suffers no casualties, but he was able to reduce much of Britain to submission. So Britain is now part of the Roman Empire. So he has a really nice triumph, and he brings across his provincial governors. Everyone's really happy. There's emblems of his victory, including the naval crown, because he'd obviously crossed the Channel. His wife is there in the carriage. That's essentially is kind of it, really, in terms of Suetonius. He thinks it's pretty pointless, but then says he does it really quickly and no one dies in terms of Roman soldiers, and he sort of submits most of the island to rule. It sounds pretty successful to me. Obviously Suetonius thinks otherwise. The other source we have to look at is this particular coin, which is obviously talking about his triumph. So an aureus is a gold coin. It gives us some quite useful titles that Claudius had at this time. So Tiberius, Claudius, Caesar, Augustus. So he's Pontifex Maximus. Remember, that becomes an inherited role after Augustus. He's been tribune. He's commander 7 times by this particular point the coin is made. So the key thing here is that he has this triumphal arch, which clearly says de Bretagne, which is obviously over Britain, and so he's got some trophies and an equestrian statue. So he obviously quite likes the equestrians. Pretty straightforward, really. Bit of propaganda. Claudius looks great. He's conquered Britain. Whoop whoop. Then we have our last section of sources on Britain. So Tacitus says that Claudius extended the Parianium, which is the sacred boundary of Rome. Sort of where he's allowed to do this once he kind of extends the empire. So he has the right to do so. He's done absolutely nothing wrong, but Tacitus can't help but have a bit of a dig. Says, but yet no Roman general, with the exception of Sulla and Augustus, had ever exercised this right, however great the nations they had conquered. So again, we've got this kind of very negative view of Claudius in the sources. Yes, he's taken over, but Augustus and others had taken over much greater lands, and they didn't extend the Parianium, this sacred boundary, so why is Claudius doing it? So we have a real issue here with the source material really kind of shown let's be honest, Claudius has extended the empire and he's done it really successfully. Good for him. Sources don't like it. That's essentially it in terms of the sources we have to cover on the invasion of Britain.